Hello, and let's go over the texture dissolve material function. To set it up, I first need a noise texture. In this case, just a grayscale would work. Put it into the mask texture input and then put the emissive line output into the emissive color and the opacity output into the opacity mask in this case. There you go. You can already see it's been fading out and in. Let's apply a little bit more color to that line though. So I'm going to multiply that with quite a bright red value and we get something more like this. Okay. For now, I'm going to disable the background. There. The Lord Min Max, you can use that to fade it out a little bit better in some cases, because you can see now that at the moment at the top and the bottom it's still a little bit there. So I'm going to get a scalar tool and plug them in. At 1, this should be moving all the way there, and at minus order 5 it should also remove the centers there. As you can see, the dips are not really there yet, so let's try order to 5, and now it's fading fully out. You might actually get away with minus 0.25, and there we go. Alright. Now, the 0 to 1 input, you can use a dynamic parameter, a particle relative time, control through blueprint, cascade, Niagara, whatever you want, of course. As a small example, I'm going to use a time. Set that period to 1 and plug it in over here. And that just starts over and over again. Alright. There's a scalar input, and in case you don't want to use a texture object, you can use a static bool. I'm going to plug it in here. And if it's false, it uses a scalar. And you can already see that there's nothing going on here in the detail one. I'm going to actually grab the same texture object and make it a texture sample. And plug it into the scalar input. And now you can see the same result again. This way you can actually add some additional things to the texture sample, like a rotator or a panner. Now I'm just going to place a panner, but you can play around with it quite a bit. And then just pan it upwards or downwards. And you can't really see it because it's moving quite fast, so I'm actually going to grab a debug time sign and use a very low speed, so 0.2 or something like that, so you can see it better. And now you can see it's somewhat moving. Let me move it a little bit faster. There, you can actually see it pan now. Okay, so that's in case you want to use a scalar input instead of a texture object. Let's go back to the normal ones. The center offset is basically where you want the core to be. At the moment it's around his chest, just below. Let's change that. There we go, center offset, and let's make it a little bit higher, like say 100 units higher. And now it starts just above its head. If I do 50, it should be in the center of his chest. There we go. If I start like minus 100, it should start at its feet. There. And go all the way up. As you can see, because of the offset, we might have to tweak these values. Not sure which one we need to check, so let's just try 2 on here. And we're almost there, so 2.125 maybe. Yep. Whoop. That way you can tweak those values. I'm actually gonna show the background again, so you can see it a little bit better. There. If I turn this back to 100, it starts at its head. Okay. So the UV multiplier is basically to change the channel, but you can also add a panel rotator in this. So let's grab a rotator for now for funsies and plug it in, and it rotates those noise textures a little bit. Not really noticeable with this one, but just to play around with it. The line thickness is how thick the red lines are. At the moment it's a value of 15, but we can try and play around with that. At 0 it's a very thin line, as you can see. 100 it's basically only red there, so try to pick something lower, maybe 5. There. And the difference with 10 is that's slightly bigger. And at just 1, you get a very thin line as well still. So play around with those values. There's also a mask texture multiplier. That's for fine tweaking the contrast. So normally it's 20, and at 0 you can see that it's almost a normal line. At 10 you can see a little bit more detail, and at 100 it should be quite crispy like this. Because the multiplier is so high, you might need to tweak these values again. So maybe even go at 3. You might even have to go higher. Let's try the negative values instead. There we go. So yeah, play around with the mask texture multiplier to really get a bit more contrast in your noise texture. And we already went over the texture or scalar boolean to change it if you want to use a texture object or just a gradient. Alright, that should be it for the text dissolve material function. Definitely play around with it because it's a lot of fun. Take care.